Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, Tulsa's source for great gardens, southwoodgardencenter.com. and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. Today's episode is all about trees. With the help of foresters from the Weyerhaeuser Company, host Casey Hentges takes us on a tour of how trees are grown for lumber. We look at the largest bald cypress tree in Oklahoma and find out about the Champion Tree Program, and we look in on a survey of all the trees in all the Oklahoma City parks.
At the Margaret Annis Boys Arboretum at Will Rogers Park in Oklahoma City. And joining me today is Brian Daugherty. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
You are with the Oklahoma City Community Foundation,
Correct.
the Parks and Public Spaces Initiative.
That's correct.
And Brian, we're here to talk about the new iTree initiative that is happening around Oklahoma City. Can you kind of tell us about how the foundation has become involved in this?
You know, the foundation's been involved with trees and tree plantings in parks and public space for over 25 years. Miss Boyes left a large part of her estate for the beautification of public grounds in Oklahoma City. I came in about 20 years ago, and as a horticulturalist and landscape architect, it was about how do we set these projects up for success? How can we do them sustainable? So we've done many, many things with different parks, different public space, different school parks. But this was an opportunity. We did a parks master plan about 5 years ago. And we identified the value of trees was all off the chart, the value of neighborhood parks. So this was an opportunity for us to turn around and to really inventory all those parks in Oklahoma City and really see how we can turn around what were the species, what were the values, how we could do it, how we could not only analyze what's been, we could look into the future.
So people want trees in their parks, but you never had a good way of creating a database as to what trees are in what parks and where you might need to plant more trees.
That's right.
This database will now allow you to do that.
This database is incredible, and we probably couldn't have done this 5 years ago. Technology has brought it with Google Earth, with everything, where you can really do things, but we'll be able to actually sit down with the Parks Department and really strategically plan out where trees might be going, what species of trees, what the value would be. So there's just tremendous value to something like this. And we had an opportunity, and so we are giving as a gift to Oklahoma City a $95,000 product, and the Department of Forestry has joined in with us to even bring it to the next layer. So they've put another 20-some thousand into it, and we really have a product that in about 4 months have something that will be beneficial on planning maintenance, on planning proactive tree planting, on looking back on what has been done, and really assessing, heaven forbid, but when you have storms, you'll be able to kind of predict and make some assessments on what cleanup might take and all by using some of the modeling tools.
And you're just starting this, you're kicking off it here at Will Rogers at the Margaret Annis Boys Arboretum?
Right, you know, it's one of the 4 cornerstone parks, so it had a big collection, and Henry Walters had the Arboretum here years ago, so we thought starting here would give a real good place for the Davey Tree Company to be able to come in and to look at the different types of trees and to see, and then it will go on to the 153 other parks in the city.
Wow, that's a lot of trees. Thank you, Brian. And now we're going to go take a look and see how this information is going to be used. Mark Bays, you are with the Oklahoma Forestry Services, and you are an urban forester.
Yep.
And so here we have this information that's being collected. What all are they doing?
Have you ever been to the doctor and had the most detailed inspection of everything from top to bottom? Well, that's what they're doing here for all the trees in all the city parks across Oklahoma City. And it's just an amazing project. It's never been done at this size, at this level ever in Oklahoma.
Wow, okay. And in fact, Stillwater did campus recently.
Yeah,
so.
Stillwater has used some of this technology to do a lot of the trees on campus with one of the clubs so yeah.
Very good. So what does this data mean to you as a forester? How are you going to be able to utilize this information?
Man, it's beyond beautification. I mean, trees are always...
We all know trees are pretty,
they're
right?
Cool and pretty, and it's nice
and
to
nice
use,
shade, yeah.
But one of the great things about this is when you go out and collect this level of information about the trees, then you can come up with all the environmental services that those trees are providing, way beyond beautification. You can get air quality improvements by having trees. You can get water quality improvements, stormwater runoff. Trees absorb air particulates, and so they can reduce coughing and really improve the air when you think about asthma. Of course, they always produce oxygen, they take out sulfur out of the air and everything. And so what we're going to be able to do with all this information is we're going to be able to run some of the most recent formulas and algorithms on all these environmental services that trees are providing.
So we think about the value of a tree, but there truly is a value in each tree other than just the prettiness of it.
That's right, absolutely. We tend to call them that green infrastructure of a city. It's not the gray infrastructure, it's the green infrastructure that's so critical to making cities livable.
And so how does this affect, we've heard about Dutch elm disease that might spread through, and how do you utilize this information when you're looking at the species that you will select for replanting, and also if you lose trees?
Well, what you'll get is you'll get a species diversity, and so that'll tell you if you have more than one kind of tree in a population, if you need to plant other trees of other, and you'll be able to see, the kinds of trees and their overall health and condition. And so what the city of Oklahoma City will be able to do then is they'll be able to use this to actually care for and properly manage the trees that they have on the public grounds, because, everywhere you go in parks, you want to make sure that they're very safe. And so that's one of the things that they're going to be able to do is use this to make sure that those parks are much safer for
They're
us.
actually rating each tree as to the condition of it.
A condition class and everything in that. And so if there's any particular maintenance needs that those trees might have, a light pruning or something, Davey Resources actually already identified a couple trees that probably should come out pretty soon. So, the overall risk of just walking through the parks here in Oklahoma City, that it's being reduced. It's much better.
That's excellent. And if we have a natural disaster, an ice storm, a tornado or something like that, we'll also know the value of trees that we lost too.
And this whole iTree, it's this program that's free of charge. Anybody can go out and do it, and there's all different scenarios with it. I used iTree Canopy to help us determine how much tree canopy that we lost in the 2013 tornado that came through May. I did a before and after scenario, and they had lost 25% of the tree cover in that area. And
Down in more.
And so they're working hard to replace that.
Okay, excellent. So if I'm a homeowner and I have a tree in my front yard, I'm not a part of the city parks, but I want to know the value of my tree. Is there a way to utilize this software also?
Yes, there is. There's a way that you can go on this iTree software. It's called iTree Design.
Okay.
And you go on that website and you'll see iTree Design come up. You can actually draw a print of your house. They use Google imaging, recent Google imaging, and so you can draw up your address on that site. You'll see your house come up, and you can actually draw a footprint of your house. And then you can help, if you want to plant a tree, you have a whole list of trees to plant, and you can choose from that, and it'll show you the best place to plant that tree to give you the best benefits. And when you're thinking about air quality, if you're thinking about energy reduction, so if you want a big shade tree, it'll actually show you where to plant that on your house. If you have other trees of different sizes, you can actually plug on that tree and you'll be able to tell just how much environmental services you're getting from those trees too. So it's really cool. So now anybody can go out and learn, just how much more than beautification that the trees on their houses are providing.
We're finally being able to quantify the value of a tree.
Right,
Thank
exactly.
you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks.
We are just outside of Idabel, Oklahoma, and we're looking at the timber industry today in Oklahoma. And joining me is Ron Duramus with Weyerhaeuser, and you are the harvesting manager. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to be here. This is a beautiful forest. How old is this forest?
This forest is 28 years old.
And we talk about it being a forest, but really it's almost like a crop, correct?
It is. It's like row crops. From about 28 years of age to 30 years of age is our process where we try to target a plantation to be harvested.
Okay.
And the first process it steps in planting. So from that part on, then we get with harvesting contractors that we have, and then the tracks laid out. We cover the specs with the BMPs.
And BMP being?
Best management practices for the site. Mm-hmm. And then they start the harvest process.
Okay, and so you have several tracks, obviously, tracks of land that we're talking about. And so you actually will harvest a whole track. It might look like clear cutting, but you are specifically harvesting a field of lumber, basically.
True.
So when you go through the harvesting, what are some of the equipment that you use, and how do they come in here and take this lumber out to harvest it?
The first piece of equipment is a fellow buncher, and what it does, it's a rubber tard rig. We also have some on tracks, but mainly rubber tard rigged here. It has a disc saw on it, and they just drive up and cut the tree and put them in piles. And then the next process is the skidding process, and they'll skid it up to the roadside where it'll be delimbed and processed into the stem. For various, if it's lumber or if it's fiber.
Okay, and it's kind of majestic to see these big trees. They're just kind of balancing on these tractors as they go to the pile to be stripped of their limbs and stuff.
They can handle them just like match stems. It's amazing.
And the lumber industry's gotten more efficient with how they use each tree, correct? I mean, they're using every last piece of it almost.
Every piece of the stem is used except for the limbs and the debris that comes off the limbs.
Okay, and then the trucks roll in and they load those up?
The trucks roll in. They have onboard scales, so they can only carry up to 85,000. And they'll transport it to one of the 5 facilities that we transport to here in McCurtain County.
Okay, and can you talk about some of your best practices as far as running equipment if it's been raining, or compaction of the soil and that sort of stuff?
The contractor is allowed 5% of the track for soil disturbance, and beyond that, then it's in violation. So. If it's on steeper terrain, after they get through, they'll put in some water bars. Mm-hmm. If it has a SMZ, which is a stream management zone in it, they'll protect it and allow 50 to 100 foot boundaries from the stream for water quality.
So you're very conscious of what's around the crop that you're harvesting and making sure not to pollute or anything like that.
Yes.
That's important.
SFI standards is what we have to adhere to.
After the timber's been harvested, the next thing is to get the land ready to be planted. And joining me now is Cody Woolley, and you are a silviculture forester for Weyerhaeuser.
That's correct.
And it's your job to get the land ready to be planted.
Yes.
So is this land ready to be planted? Can you kind of tell me what that process is?
It is. We a few weeks ago we come in here and we have a D8 dozer with a ripper on the back of it, and we made one pass every 20 feet. And what it does is it kind of breaks the soil loose and kind of creates this little furrow right here, and that'll kind of fill back in as it rains. Mm-hmm. And then in this winter, when the trees are dormant, we'll come back and we'll plant trees in each one of these rows. Okay, so right now in the summertime, you're going through and you're ripping these furrows in the land, but you won't plant until wintertime. That's correct. That's correct. We have to leave some time for the dirt to kind of silt back in and mm-hmm. take place, and that creates the ideal planting spot for the tree. So how deep do you rip? It's basically like creating a seed furrow, if you will. That's right. That's right. Our specs say 18 inches. Okay. And then what size trees are we planting back in there? Oh, they're pretty small. They're about 10 to 12 inches. Okay. And these rows aren't straight. They're based off of the contour of the land? Yes. Our operators will follow the topography. Okay. And then that allows for the water, when it rains, to run down the hill and fall in that furrow. So that helps those trees get established. Yes. Okay. During the drought period, it's real important that we have that. So we have a large tract of land here, but it doesn't necessarily look like a set square plot that's been harvested. How do you determine the track? Well, we try to mimic a natural disturbance, like such as a fire or a tornado or something along that lines, and it kind of doesn't have square edges to it, and so it kind of gives it that natural look.
Okay, excellent.
And that also is real important for wildlife, because wildlife will come out here into this area and feed on the new growth that's coming up, and then they'll go to the neighboring stand and for cover and protection.
So you're actually increasing the amount of forest prairie interface there for them to come and find food.
That's right.
And stuff. Interesting, very good to know. So after we have the forest ready to be planted, Kelly Kemp, who is a silviculture forester for Weyerhaeuser, you come in and you're responsible for the planting of the new crop.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you kind of tell us about this, the spacing, the pruning that you have to do?
Okay. What we do is, after it's been site prepped, we come in and plant. And our planting season is usually December through about the end of March.
Okay.
And this track right here, this stand here, is about 4 years old. So about 4 years ago, we went through the process of harvesting and ripping. We ripped this on a 20-foot spacing. And you can see that we got pine trees every 5 feet in that 20-foot row.
Now you don't let all those mature. You're probably going to lose a few here and there, or do you thin them out?
We do. We'll lose a few. Right here's a spot where one died.
Okay.
But we still got one on each side. And what we'll do is, when these trees reach about 13 or 14 years old, we'll come in here and thin.
Okay.
And right now we've got it planted to about 435 trees per acre. We'll thin down to about 120 trees per acre.
And do you make use of those that you thin out?
We do. We send those to the pulp mill, and they make paper out of those.
Okay, all right. And so then after, do you have to do any pruning in that process to grow them into mature lumber?
We select stands to prune after they've been thinned. We'll go in and evaluate each stand and see if it's suitable for high quality sawtimber. If it is, we'll prune it up to 21 feet.
And so does that reduce the number of knots that might be in your timber? Or
It reduces the knots in the board, and what a knot in the board does is it downgrades the grade of the board.
Okay.
And a board is worth less that has more knots in it. So when we prune, that tree grows clear wood instead of knotty wood, and we get higher grade lumber from
Okay.
that.
All right, and what about competition with other trees that might be coming up, some of your shade trees, your deciduous trees?
This particular stand here, we did a herbicide treatment when it was about 2 years old, and the target was the woody competition. As you can see, we didn't completely eliminate all the competition. There's still a mixture of different types of competition, but it's not competing with the pine. See how the pine are up taller than the brush? That's what we were after.
So you just do it enough to give the pines a chance to get a head start.
We call it a release treatment. It releases the pines to grow above the competition.
Now, you mentioned the process of planting these trees. Is that a mechanical process, or?
All these trees are hand planted.
So every one of these trees have been touched by hand.
Every one of these trees have been touched by hand, pulled out of a planting bag, and stuck in a hole in the ground.
And then you just rely on the furrows that you've created to water and the natural rainfall that you receive?
Correct. We don't do any artificial watering of this tract.
So it sounds very sustainable, the cycle that you have for harvesting lumber.
It is. We have our tree farm divided into stands, and we know how many acres we can harvest each year and do this in a continual rotation from now on.
So you have several tracts. Do you ever harvest a tract that's right next to one another so there's a big area, or do you try to diversify where you're harvesting?
We lay these settings out where there's a mosaic, and we don't harvest two tracts side by side. We wait either 3 years or wait till they get 5 feet tall before we harvest next to it.
Okay, and so you've done this, and this will be growing for the next 20-some years.
It will. We'll grow this tract for about another 10 years and then thin it, and then grow it for about another 10 after that, and come in and final harvest and start the whole process all over again.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing with us.
You bet. We appreciate y'all coming.
We are down in some of the swamplands of Oklahoma looking at some state champion trees, and joining me is Dennis Wilson, a research specialist for the Kiamichi Forestry Research Station.
Welcome, Casey. We're in the Little River National Wildlife Refuge.
Thank you.
We're in the lower swamp area of an area that's called Duck Roost that has the state record bald cypress tree.
Okay, it's a big one.
It is, and we have the swamp water around us. We've still got some some muddy soils underneath us. The buttress, they're at 4.5 feet, which is measured from the water, below the water area to 4.5 feet. That tree is 292 inches around in circumference. And the height of that tree is 128 feet. And the crown spread from the widest point is 77 feet. So that ranks right now as far as we've got no lightning damage or any other vector that's going to knock it out, but that's been the sustaining champion for the last 4 or 5 years. And again, a state champion tree is one that gets found, gets identified, gets measured, and numerical ranking ranks it where it is. It's not to say that any given time we may find a tree bigger. Or we may lose that tree.
Trees are constantly growing, right?
Constantly growing, and the cycles of life are there too. Whether they get hit by ice or lightning or some vector, we could lose that tree.
And it's a beautiful tree. I mean, it does have a split leader, but it's beautiful, and we could actually see it. There was a little bit of a clearing as we were walking up, and you could see it towering over some of the other trees.
This is a very dominant tree, and the canopy, it dwarfs everything in the canopy as it comes out of this area. This area usually is sustainable in water. The area we're standing right now was underwater in December, and it was also underwater in June. So we had no access to this area at that time because Little River is just we're about 75 yards from Little River, and Little River is the lifeblood and the sustaining of the wetlands that are here in Little River National Wildlife Refuge.
Well, it's just a beautiful tree, and you would think we're in Louisiana, but in fact we are in southeastern Oklahoma. Let's go take a look at some more trees.
That'd be great, thank you.
So Dennis, this is a huge tree, but it's not the state champion.
That's true. This is an American holly.
Which a lot of people think is actually a shrub.
That's true. And this one does have red berries. It has evergreen foliage that's on the tree year-round. It has this nice light-colored bark. And it's also got these nice hole patterns. What's this all about, Casey?
I don't know, you're the bird man.
These marks are found on lots of trees, particularly deciduous trees that have sap in the wintertime. And these are holes drilled by the yellow-bellied sapsucker to obtain nectar or fluid for him to eat. So here we have a holly tree that bears its leaves, so it has sap. We have live oaks that keep their leaves in the wintertime. He drills them for the sap. We get apple trees and hickory trees, he also does that through. So these are not animals that bored into this tree and are going to kill it, but these are wounds that the sapsucker made to give him the fluid that he needs to sustain himself, and that's what these holes are all about.
And you can usually tell it's a yellow-belly sapsucker because the lines either go horizontal or perpendicular.
That's correct.
As they sit there and kind of go across the tree.
And generally they're going to be more often probably horizontal. And because the sap's going to gravity again, as the sap comes up, it's going to catch on the edge of the wound and drip.
Okay.
So that's what the sapsucker, the little small woodpecker, is after.
All right, well, let's go take a look at another tree.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis, there's just so much plant life around here and so many diverse trees. You've brought us to another state champion.
That's correct. This one's the state champion sugar maple, and it's right on the banks of Little River within Little River National Wildlife Refuge. So we're in this particular tree. It's a full 75 inches around at DBH, and that's 4.5 feet up above from the ground.
DBH being diameter at breast height.
And we're measuring the circumference, so it's 75 inches when we go around this tree. The height of this tree is 85 feet, and the crown spread, the greatest distance its branches, is 30 feet. So it's a dominant tree, breaks through the canopy above us. It's obtaining lots of sunlight coming down. And like I say, it's on the high bank of the river, so it's sustained lots of water flowing by it over the years. Sugar maples here are kind of unique. We've got all kinds of offspring here on the forest floor, but we don't have a bad enough winter or a severe enough winter to dictate trying to collect sap from this one. Okay. We would likely make sap wine rather than sap syrup.
But you probably get some nice fall foliage.
It is excellent. The colors here within the area, the sugar maple turns a brilliant orange and then kind of fades to red. The leaves stay on pretty pronounced. It's a tree that it's in and out of the canopy. So here, foliage-wise, we have roughly the 10th and 11th of November is probably our premier time for tourists to come down and see foliage. And this would be one of the places they could come through and see some good foliage.
So if people in Oklahoma think they might have a state champion tree, or they just want more information, where could they go?
I think the easiest way to go to is go to the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture website, Forestry Services, and there'll be a champion tree list. When you hit that link, you'll have multiple selections. You can learn how to turn in a tree, what you measure to dictate it, if you want to make a phone call for a person to come out and verify what that tree is. Sometimes we get trees misidentified, and it might be a big tree, but it's not the species they think it is. So those are all ways to help. And once that information's in, it gets punched into a category in that this tree has a value based on those parameters that we looked at, and that gives it a score. And the score is kind of arbitrary, but that tells us that tree's different or bigger than the next tree.
And on that website, they can also find a list for the state champion trees that are currently existing.
That's correct. It's actually a PDF file. It's a 12-page. I've got a sheet of it here, so it can print down. You can look at some of the pictures of the trees by some of the hosts. It tells you what counties they're in. So if you think you've got a big tree and it's not in your county, then by all means, you need to try to see if it's in the next state record tree.
Terrific.
Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, we will revisit some of our favorite segments from the tour of Southeast Oklahoma. So join us then for more TV you'll grow to love.
To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.